So today I'm going to reveal to you my new project that I'll be posting some videos on. I've actually had this car for about 3 years now and I've done a lot of work to it already. I'm going to bring you up to speed with what I've done on this car. This has had a lot of work, so stay tuned, follow along because there's a lot of detail to come and I'm going to start filming the rest to finish it off. Come, let me show you this new car. The Datsun 240Z began production in late 1969 on to about 1976, 78. The two doors, that is. The 240Z turned into the 260Z. It's for a year or two it stayed as a two-door and then it moved up to the 2+2, which meant that it was still two doors but there was another two seats in the back, hence the 2+2. This is a Fairlady Z from Japan. This has been imported by somebody in the past, not me, and it's just found its way into my hands. When I bought this, it was off eBay and I just put a bid in thinking that I probably won't get it, but I did. It was just a rolling shell. It had no engine in it. There was a hole in the bonnet. There was rust all in the floor. When I went, I didn't expect it. I didn't go and inspect before I bid. I just went and bid on it. And then when I went to go inspect, it looked alright. Some of the side panels looked okay. In the engine bay, it was definitely lots of rust. But once I started to take off some of the paint, I could see that there's actually more rust. So if you're going to buy a Datsun only car that is known to be rusty, look out for under the paint if you can for rust or bubbling paint, things like that, where rust could be from behind. But this car was definitely in trouble, so it needed a lot of work, and at the time I had a lot more time and I was free and I was prepared to do it. I always wanted a 240Z. And since then, the past few years, they've just skyrocketed in popularity to become. You just type in Datsun, this is the car that will pop up. This one, I've had some crazy plans for it, and it's just snowballed into just more crazy things. So how about I just show you and bring you up to speed with the 73 Fairlady Z. When I picked up this Datsun 240Z, there was a lot more rust than I thought there originally was, and the entire floor and the rails needed to be rebuilt. So at that time I was researching some ideas and I thought, well, if I'm going to rebuild it all, how about I rebuild it into something that can hold a bit more power and a bit more better suspension and park options. So as you see it today, this 240Z looks like a 240Z, but it's really not. It's about a combination of about 4 or 5 different Nissan sports cars. The only thing original left in the driveline of this vehicle, you can say, is just the steering column. Everything else is completely changed out. So let me show you what I mean by something special. Here we have the Nissan VH45. This is a 4.5 litre V8 engine that Nissan made. It was put in the Nissan, it's called a Nissan President, The intake on this engine looks a little bit different right now because it's not from Nissan. This is actually from a Porsche K&S. So that car also has a 4.5 litre V8. I'll show you a little bit more about that in a later episode. I had a bit of trouble. There's actually two different series of this engine. I got the Series 1 engine, which has some Siamese twin ports. So the adapters that were made on the market didn't actually suit this series of the engine to adapt to the Porsche intake manifold. So that wasn't going to stop me, so I went on a quest to design my own. So underneath here, I can't pull it off just yet, I'll show you in another episode. In here, I designed this piece completely myself and had it made up, and it bolts to the Siamese port heads, and then allows the Porsche intake to bolt onto that. So that was a fun little project. Once I got this 240Z off eBay, I thought, let's put in the Nissan V8 in it. That would be awesome. It was a good idea at the time. Would I do it again? No, because there's been way too much fabrication involved to get this thing in here. But it actually has worked out okay because this car required a lot of repairs, and so the repairs just turned into some custom builds to make everything fit. Another exciting thing about this car is that if you know anything about 240Zs, these are not the strut tops. These strut towers have been built and grafted from Nissan Silvia. So those strut tops, and also another thing is these rails underneath here are also from the Nissan Silvia. So what has happened is I've actually bought, before rolling shells were $3,000 on Facebook, it's ridiculous. I bought a Nissan 180XX shell for about $200 or $300, and it was an X drift car, so it'd been beat up on the panels. The front end had a few radiator support modifications, but all the rails underneath and suspension strut tops were perfect for what I needed. So I cut that car up and I used the bits to graft into this 240Z chassis to create a hybrid of Nissan Silvia suspension technology with Fairlady Z body. Again, would I do this again or to a car that wasn't rusted? No, definitely not. But in this case, when this car was so rusted, yes, it worked out just fine. If you know anything about 240Zs, this will probably all look a bit different. But if you know anything about Nissan Silvias, it'll look quite familiar. So this suspension coil over here is aftermarket, but it's all for, this is actually S14-15 suspension, and I've got an S15 Silvia knuckle there with a 5-stud hub. So Nissan Silvias like the S13s or 180SXs came with a 4-stud, and I've actually owned a few S13s, or actually I've owned a few 180s, and I know a lot about upgrading those vehicles, and this was a popular upgrade to a 5-stud, so you could have 5-stud disc brakes with larger calipers. These calipers are actually off a R33 Skyline GTST, so they're turbo brakes. You can swap. Nissan make calipers very similar to the S14-15, the R33, the Z32. They're all very similar calipers, about the same size, they all bolt on the same. There's just some slight differences in what they're made of. As far as I know, the best ones are these ones, which are made of alloy, so they're a bit lighter weight, so less unsprung weight. So yeah, R33 GTST Skyline 5-stud turbo brakes, so that's on there. So to fit this suspension, I've also got, this is the S13 lower control arm that attaches to the S13 engine K-frame. This is the underside of grafting in the S13 rails. So I measured up everything to exactness and then welded in the chassis rails, and now everything just bolts up as it would on a Nissan Silvia. So that just makes everything easy for me. So now instead on a 240Z, the rear caster, the caster arms here would go to the would face rearwards behind the engine. On Nissan Silvias they face frontwards like this one. So that goes out to the front, and because everything here is from a Silvia, it all bolts up exactly where it needs to go. So there's a little bit more work I need to do in reinforcing that, and also adding some steering column guides. I can show you that a bit later. So underneath, the same thing, the rails can, when I bought these floors, I got them from a company called Rare Spares. They just easily line up and they can weld in. These floors came with recreated original scaled rails, bottom rails. The thing is with 240Zs, the rails don't actually go to the rear of the car, they stop behind the driver's seat. So this time I wanted to make it stronger, so if I can zoom up to it, here we go. I actually made my own rails, went down to the local engineering shop and got them folded to the right specs, and then welded them. So these go all the way to the rear of the car, which leads me to another exciting part. The rear of this car is also completely different. You can notice it's also 5-stud. Haven't taken the wheel off, but if you can see in there, it's also disc brakes. Down here, let's have a look inside. This is a S13 Silvia rear subframe. Same thing that I did to the front. I've actually grafted in the Nissan Silvia chassis rail. So right here, going down, back up again, is Silvia chassis rails. So with only a little bit of modification, I was able to line them straight up into the back here and weld it all together, and it fits awesome. Same thing for the front. Doing this has allowed me to keep all the original or stock bolting points. So for the rear subframe, bolts here, over there, another 2 at the front of it. It's just easy, just bolt straight in, and it keeps all the sway bar joints, everything. It's just a neat little package. Putting in a different subframe, it's stronger, and again, I just like the availability of parts and the modifications that you can do these subframes. It opens up a lot of doors. I've actually modified this subframe again to fit a 350Z or Z33 R200 diff. The rear wasn't too bad, it was just one bolting point. The front subframe needed cutting and raising up to align the front of the diff with the drive shaft to be more straight towards the gearbox. Once I put this subframe in, again, a lot of Nissan sports cars are interchangeable suspension components. At the rear here, I've also got the S15 rear, the rear coilovers. I went for that because they were the right length to fit up to the standard 240Z strut top. So if I come back to the top here and have a look in here, that's actually the original strut top. And so lo and behold, the length of the S14 or S15 Silvia suspension was the right length also for the 240Z. So that worked out really well. So if you haven't noticed already, I've done a lot of research and a lot of playing around and to see what would work. And I was just kind of working things out as going along, and yeah, just having a lot of fun at the time. So those bolt up. So what I had to do was actually down here, all the bottom lower control arms here are S13. The top one was the S14-15. That's just a slightly different shape to allow the suspension to get through. The S13, or even I think it's like Z32 top suspension control arms there, actually the coilover actually goes through it, so through a hole, or it loops around the coilover. I couldn't use it in this application because the suspension or coilover, the angle in which it goes up into the 240Z strut top, it would hit that just ever so slightly. So using, and it's probably why when they changed up from the S13 to S14, they changed this control arm up the top here because of that reason, because it probably rubbed on it. So this one just goes around behind. So from here goes around behind. So I just swapped that part over and it worked fine. Now the knuckles, the rear knuckles it attaches to, they are the ones I got. I might swap them out, we'll see, but they are actually R33 rear knuckles. They're S13, 14, 15 and the R chassis Skyline rear knuckles are almost all identical. I think the only differences are between where the suspension mounts, like some are a bolt in or other ones slide on and then I put a nut on, and this rear this traction arm here, they have different bushings inside there. One for the high cast, which is like a type of four-wheel steer on Skylines, which a lot of people get rid of. So I just swapped it out and put a different bushing in there. We'll see how long that lasts. I'm still thinking about changing that. But yeah, all those knuckles pretty much the same, can't go wrong there. But with that knuckle I can bolt on a different bearing. So that's what allowed me to bolt on a 5-stud bearing, and once I did that, I also got the R33 GTST Skyline rear brakes. So that the rear brakes on a Skyline or turbo Skyline are a combination of rear drum brakes and rear disc. So believe it or not, inside here it confuses a lot of people, but if the camera focuses, here we go. So this section here where I'm pointing is the disc section, and just in it from behind down here now is the drum section. So inside here, the drum handbrake, that's a drum solely just for the handbrake. And and on the outside, and the disc on the outside is when you use your foot pedal brake. So a lot of people like that. It's a nice little upgrade. It's nice just using, you just pull I can attach it, just pull the handbrake over here. That's just run off a cord and it will pull the drum handbrakes on the rear. So on the Silvias, the rear brakes are just solely disc brakes, and the handbrake cable pulls the original caliper to grip on as a handbrake. So I prefer the R33 rear brakes, with being a handbrake dedicated to the drum brake and then your foot pedal brake to the rear disc. So that's something a bit nice too. I forgot to mention too the transmission that I've adapted to the Nissan V8 engine. So I've actually got a Nissan 350Z Z33 6-speed manual transmission. This bolts on down in here. I did a lot of research. This was the reason why I chose this gearbox, is because I also had it spare lying around in my shed from another project in the past. I actually had a 350Z and I missed that car, and it was very good. The technology in that vehicle is better than any Silvia or Skyline car, but now at the moment they're going for a really good price, so buy them up before they go expensive again. This black bit here is an adapter plate, and or a sandwich plate if you like to call it that. So I bolt this adapter plate to the engine, and then the gearbox bolts to that. It does add some distance in between the gearbox and the motor, so to counter that you have to machine down the face of the gearbox bell housing. So I went to a machinist and they did that for me, and I have not tested it yet, but everything seems to line up and I think it will work no problem. I bought this adapter plate from America. There was a company, I think it was called Collins Performance, or Collins VH Performance, I think that's what it was. There's a lot of parts that I bought from America for this car, and that's why I wouldn't do this swap again unless you're prepared to, unless you live in America and you can get the parts easier, or unless you want to go get all the parts, or order the parts from America and pay the American prices for them. So that adapter plate was made to fit this engine and gearbox. If I would do it again, this is a multi-adapter, so you can fit different gearboxes to this adapter. If I would do this again, or use this engine again, I would actually go with the 5-speed transmission, which is either from a Z32 Nissan 300 ZX, or from the R33 Skylines. They have the same gearboxes, so I would probably use that one because it's a little bit easier to fit up, and from what I read online there was less modifications and less trouble for it to fit up. So yeah, but where I am right now, I've made it fit. Again, it was more of a cost-effective thing. I had this gearbox left over, so and I bought this motor, so I thought I'll put the two together, and yeah, here it is. So it is together, so hopefully it'll work well. The next troubles I was having is fitting this engine in. It's really wide. If you understand this, it's a 90-degree V8, so the shape of the V is 90 degrees, meaning that it moves out wider. A lot of other V8s are less than 90 degrees, making it not as wide, or it makes it a bit taller. So it was having trouble fitting in, but now with these modified strut tops, it does actually fit now. But just there's if I move over here, there's some good clearance in there. But what was really troubling was the exhaust, how it would fit. And if in America, a lot of people with their Nissan Silvias will swap in this engine because it's more available over there. They'll swap it into their Silvia, and they have the same problems as fitting the exhaust. So I had to get a bit creative with this exhaust, doing a bit of research, and you can buy flanges, exhaust flanges to bolt to the heads. In my research, I was looking around, and it's not really this. This is where I took a few risks and a few chances, and I had to buy some parts and see if I could make it work myself. So the internet said that you can't always trust the internet, but from what I gathered, an LS type engine, the exhaust ports would line up with the Nissan Q45 exhaust ports. They were just a different shape, one being oval and one being the LS being circular. So I actually bought a LS, what they call on eBay, a shorty LS exhaust manifold, and I bought that, and then these adapter exhaust flanges to change from oval to circular. And lo and behold, when I cut the flanges off the LS manifold, the exhaust pipes pretty much lined up. Like there was maybe a millimeter out on some of them, lined up with the Nissan flange. So I was able to make them fit, and had a mate weld them up for me. Now they fit absolutely perfect in here. So that was a big win, because the LS exhaust was actually quite cheap because those parts are everywhere. It was actually more expensive to buy the flange that fits to the head. But again, I was on a quest to make this work. I was not going to let it defeat me. I was not going to let it make me give up and just shove something else in here. Which leads me to the rest of the exhaust. So this goes down. This is completely custom built exhaust as well by me. Just yesterday I was practicing with the TIG welder and having a go building my first exhaust. This is all these pipes here are made out of stainless steel, and I've just tack welded them on. It doesn't look too good at the moment. I was practicing, but they're tack welded on into place. Come down the bottom here. So from here is the bottom of the exhaust manifold that comes off the engine into a pipe, joins to the catalytic converter. So there's two of these. I've doubled up. So over here there's one, over here another little bend into a just gone mind blank. I forgot what these joins are, but it's a clamp that holds together the flanges. Someone can tell me what they are in the comments. It's been a while, I've forgotten. Into a flex joint. It connects to a flex joint, and then a couple more bends into a crossflow center muffler. Anyone who's into V8s know about, so they have, because you have twin exhausts, if you join it together or have a cross flow or an X pipe, whatever you want to call it, or cross pipe, what it does is, as one bank of the engine is firing, it creates a vacuum on the other side or the other bank of the engine as the exhaust fumes are going out of the car through the cross flow pipe. That's the best way I can explain it. So anyway, this muffler is, where's it from? Magnaflow. I think that's also a US company. Pretty cheap and pretty good quality. So that's crossflow. Crossflow is incorporated inside that muffler, and then it comes out to dual outlets again. From this angle, get a bit of angle here. Here's that Nissan Silvia rear subframe with the Z33 rear diff. This bright green sway bar here, this is something special. This has also come from America. This is from a company called Siki. They do some pretty cool conversions of things and make some parts that just make conversions a bit easier. And this is one of them. This is a S13, because it's a S13 rear subframe. This is the S13 dual hump rear sway bar. So the dual humps basically allow for twin exhausts to go through each side. So I bought that just to make a true twin exhaust come out each side of the rear of the vehicle. So I'm still yet to build that. Here's the rear of the crossflow muffler. I'm going to build out here, one down there, and one down there. So it's going to be pretty cool. So yeah, again, more parts from different Nissans and more parts from America. This tail shaft here is custom built from my local tail shaft guy. He's built it to handle some high torque, high power, so hopefully that's all good. But yeah, it fits in perfect and looks really good. Let's come back out. Moving up to the front here, this is actually an R33 Skyline, just aftermarket aluminium radiator. I've put on twin thermo fans. It's just a neat little package. It fits in there really well. I actually have modified this this radiator. So the top inlet over here is on the right side. If you're looking at it from this angle, it's on the right side of the radiator, and then on the standard bit would be, the outlet would be at the bottom, also on the right side. So I'm not sure why it's like that, because that means the flow, it'd be, this radiator would be using more of the right side of the radiator in the flow of the water going through. So anyway, what I did was, if you notice down here on the left there, I've moved the outlet to the left side of the radiator, so that means it forces the water to go through and cross all the way through using all of the radiator and come out the other side, and that makes the radiator better. But also on the engine, the actual pipes that go into the engine are on the left and right side. I think that's the inlet and that's the outlet. So the water pump, there's a new water pump in there. There's a housing in there for the water inlet. There's a thermostat housing. I had to modify that a little bit and to shorten it or make it sit a bit lower on the engine, so then this Porsche intake manifold could then fit. The other one, when it was sitting this in the stock position, it was just sitting a bit too high and it would hit this manifold, so that's modified a bit, cut up and re-welded. So again, I haven't tested any of this, but it should be fine. Like, it looks fine, and if it breaks, you know, I'll just fix it. It's all part of it. So I've got more parts and boxes. Majority of this is here. I built some intake pipes as well. Yeah, the engine looms in boxes. So yeah, this is just some crazy thing that started off with a V8 engine, a spare gearbox, and it's just snowballed into something crazy. This is the clutch from the Z33 for that gearbox. But here, this is the brake booster. Pretty much all the Skylines, Silvias, they're all the same. A lot of other Nissans, they're all the same. And just with very little modification to the firewall, I think I had to enlarge the holes just a little bit for the bolts to go through. That was it, and it just bolted straight in, and it lined up to the original 240Z brake pedal. So, and then on the front here, I could just bolt on my again, just the Skyline brake master cylinder. It's going to bolt on here, and then I can just make new cables. I can make new pipes, brake lines that just go out to the front and go to the back, and yeah, pretty easy. So the majority of it's here. So the firewall, it was really rusted as well, so I've replaced that, welded in a new one. I've kept the original, haven't touched where the original chassis number is. So yeah, that's where it is. So there's still some bodywork to do. I've changed the bottom door seals. I've also changed the door skins. These black panels come from Rare Spares. They're actually a bit expensive. It was like $300 something each. The roof on this car, it was all intact. It was just a bit rusty, more than I liked, and so I've been really particular on this car. Just any rust I've wanted to just cut out and replace, so that then I could say there was just no rust in it at all. So this roof's actually from a different vehicle, and I'm in between repairing it too. There's actually a section at the front here that I'm just sizing up and testing to weld and fix that. So yeah, that's just sitting there. At the back here, there's a big hole because of I'm gonna have twin exhaust mufflers. I couldn't fit all the exhaust wrapping around the original fuel tank, so I've actually cut the spare wheel out and cut a square hole for a fuel cell, and having it raised up, and that's going to be fully enclosed and safe. So that comes through the rear floor there. So no spare wheel unless I set the spare wheel on top of the fuel cell. We'll see once I get there, but there's a bit of fabricating go there. The rest to do is just going to be all standard 240Z. So it's going to be original dash, seats,
carpet, lighting, it's all just going to look original. Original steering wheel, original door cards. So that's all I can think of right now. There's probably heaps more, but I just can't remember. Oh, actually, yeah, see, here's another one. So on the Z33 gearbox, the gearbox shifter, the shifter actually sits back a lot further on that gearbox. And so I've actually bought a product from GK Tech. They're an Australian company. They've also gone overseas to America and Japan, and their main warehouse in Australia is just down the road from me, about an hour. And they build a lot of aftermarket parts for Silvias, Skylines, and now a lot for Z cars. So this transmission shifter, I don't know, shortener or adapter, it brings the shifter forward, and so they've created this because they've used this gearbox in Silvias and it helps them line it up. So in my application also, I wanted to bring the shifter forward to fit the original spot, so I did so, and that's what it looks like. So yeah, it just fits nicely there. So yeah, 6-speed in a 240Z, man, with a Nissan VH45 V8 in the front. So this thing's gonna sound awesome. It's gonna have a bit of power. It's got the brakes, it's got the chassis, it's got the suspension all to back it up. I'm not building it for like lots of power. I'm just building it because it's gonna be cool, and just drive it around and just feel awesome in the creation that I've made. So yeah, I've been talking a lot, but if you've been keep watching this whole time, well done. But I'll try to show all the work that I keep doing to come, and including more body panel work, paint job and wiring jobs, more exhaust jobs, yeah, just a lot of cool things to come. So yeah, a lot of thought has gone into this car and a lot of work. So thanks for watching, and see you next time on the 240Z build. See ya.